President Joe Biden is considering forgiving $10,000 in student loans. And I'm told that he will have a decision before the end of the moratorium period, which is at the end of August of 2022. Now, this is a very nuanced conversation, but personally, if you ask me, I think it's a temporary solution to a permanent problem. So for those of you who don't know, there was this act that was enacted in 2005, and it's called the Bankruptcy Abuse Prevention and Consumer Protection Act. And it was enacted to include private student loans as one of the 10 debts that cannot be forgiven. So in 2005, student loans ceased being dischargeable, meaning that you cannot declare bankruptcy on them. So this essentially means, in a nutshell, when you really think about it, that lenders assume no risk in giving out these student loans. So if you actually look at college tuition since then, they've ballooned because institutions realize that they can just charge whatever the fuck they want for college, because the government is pretty much the guarantor of these loans. So it's just been this whole fucking debacle where a lot of people, particularly in the younger generation, are underwater because of these student loans. And my solution in particular to the student loan crisis is to make student loans dischargeable again, which will result in stricter lending criteria and drive down the cost of higher education. So really, the federal government has to get out of like the higher education loan business like entirely. So lenders will be less likely to provide loans to individuals who pursue bullshit degrees like left-handed puppetry, as Dave Ramsey likes to talk about quite a bit, and lesbian dance theory, as Ben Shapiro likes to talk about. So to appease the student loan companies, I feel like they should be offered maybe tax credits for accepting student loan forgiveness and allowing young people to declare bankruptcy, but not traditional bankruptcy as you're thinking. I would think that maybe you kind of, in a roundabout way to protect the financial system, the student loan bankruptcy should be held under a different classification than traditional bankruptcy. So that way the younger generation doesn't go through a period of 7 years of shitty credit scores and not being able to get, not being able to get an apartment, to lease a car, to buy a car, finance a car or whatever. So I feel like it should be a different type of bankruptcy, like some type of special classification. But my main thought in that process is maybe the younger generation, they should have to disclose their student loan bankruptcy to prospective lenders and creditors, because that's only right? So, if you're $100,000 in student loan debt and then you discharge the debt, like if you're going to go to BMW and go to buy like a 3 Series and finance it, like BMW should have a right to know that, hey, you fucking had $100,000 in student loans and then you just said, fuck it, and didn't pay it off, and then you discharged it. So I guess my main point in bringing all this up is that it's such a nuanced conversation. It's such a big thing that no one's really spoke about for quite some time. And now it looks like we might finally come to head here, and there might actually be $10,000 of student loan forgiveness for people who are affected by it. So God, my man, I'm just wondering, how do you feel about the student loan things? And then additionally, like, what did you think about my proposal about making them dischargeable and allowing students to be able to kind of get rid of this non-dischargeable debt?
Yeah, I don't really like the idea of having dischargeable debt. I think if you take out a loan or you commit to something, I think you should pay it back. I'm not really a fan of like bankruptcy in that regard. In general, like how people restructure and they have these companies and they just open up a new company and they declare bankruptcy, etc. That serves some kind of a moral high ground kind of a problem. And I don't think basically discharging the debt solves the problem either. I think you really have to go to the at the educational level and teach these people financial literacy and how to choose schools and how to basically pick the best value for their dollar, and not go to a $60,000 school times whatever 4 years, $240,000, and go $240,000 in debt for a career that might pay 40, 50,000. Like, that's not a wise financial decision on your investment. Like, I see if you want to be a doctor, you could pay $40,000 a year times 4, and whatever. Maybe you could pay 400,000 or 500,000 for that education and become a doctor, because the income potential, you get 6, 7, 800,000 in return. But you have to look at the income potential for your job, how much you're paying to get that job and get the qualities needed for that job, and whether or not it's worth it. You can't be going and paying an exorbitant amount of money and then getting a job as a social worker, et cetera, that pays, $30,000, $40,000 a year. It's just not worth it financially. And your monthly payments on a loan, basically it'll be impossible to ever pay back. And I think the government is being complicit in this. And, I think just like, I don't think they should even like give out the loans. They should say, oh, you don't qualify for this loan because you're going for this job and, you don't make enough money. Like they should basically have stricter requirements on if you want this loan, you have to go for this, and this is the median salary, etc. And you qualify to take out this much of a loan each and every year. And they should be more requirements on working in that regard. If you want to take out a loan from the federal government, you should be forced to basically work while you're in college. I think everybody can work while they're in college. People say like, "Oh, I'm going to school full time. I can't work." That's bullshit. You could work while you're in school and get some money to pay off your education and, dwindle down the bill. And, I think state school and city's college is it's a good opportunity for each individual. And they should look, long and hard on why should they have to go to a private school. It's not really that much of a better education. You're getting the same kind of education in every school you go. Let me tell you one thing. They all use the same books. They all use Pearson. They all use, whatever. They all use these same textbooks. It's not much of a different education, and the teachers aren't that much smarter at a different school than they are. They're not that much smarter at, say, an Ivy League school than they are at another private school or at one of these state and city colleges. It's pretty much the same education you're getting everywhere. Yeah, since we have the internet and everything's online, and we have this kind of standardized education through these book publishers.
Yeah, you brought up a lot of great points there. Particularly there was this study that was done, and it's fucking crazy. So Harvard, I believe it was Harvard Medical School. They basically published this information. I don't know why they did. And you're going to be baffled when I tell you this, but it totally makes sense, especially with the internet and the new innovations coming up and different things that pop up. So Harvard Medical School came out and said that the half-life of the teaching material that they cover is 2 years. Think about that. For the medical school, the half-life of the material they're teaching is 2 years. So medical school, at like the bare minimum, you're there for like 5 years. So by the time you graduate, the material that you were just taught 3 years ago, assuming you're there for 5 years, is completely outdated and no longer relevant to the field that you're working in.
Well, that's not for all of the material. I'm assuming there's some standardized material that doesn't change.
Right, of
But
course.
yeah,
Like the human
there are
body's
updated
not going to
studies
change. Yeah,
and clinical studies, etc. But that's why you take educational credits every year. You have to take a certain number of educational credits to basically maintain your status. It's like any job, accountant, or any kind of professional certification. You have to take a certain number of educational credits in a certain time frame.
absolutely. And I like what you said though about the government kind of just got like vetting people and saying, hey, you know what? You're studying left-handed puppetry. Like that's not really a field that's expected to grow in the next 5 or 10 years. Like you don't really qualify for a loan and turning people away. That's the way to do it. That is the way to do it. Because to give someone a loan for some bullshit fucking degree that has no potential job prospects post graduation is pretty ridiculous. Like it's just it honestly, I think there's a lot of people who they go to college and they're just there to party and they don't know what the fuck they want to do with their lives. And I don't think I'm actually in favor of potentially pushing like college further down the road. We mentioned this in the past offline, but Israel in particular requires everyone to do mandatory military service before attending college, and their college is more of I guess a co-op. So you work for someone and then you also study the field. So you have like that typical American like classroom experience, but then you also do like an internship at the same time. So like if you're going to become a financial advisor or an accountant, like you work alongside those people in that field. And then instead of having like 15 credits or like 12 credit semesters, like half of it would be in like a classroom setting and then half of it would be more kinesthetic, like hands-on learning. And that's good because that's how you're going to learn what to do. I think the whole American education system is inherently flawed because you're just pushing people into a funnel and you're like, okay, let me just read to you out of this fucking textbook. Like, why you need to know this, or like why this is important, or like how to explain this. And it's just dumb, because how many people do you know that like graduate college or go into different fields, and then they're like, well, I don't really want to work in that field. And it's just like, well, you're being forced to make this stupid decision at the age of 18 because that's just how society is set up. And if you don't make that decision by the time you're 18, society just like inherently views you as like some type of loser, even though I would say that you're probably more rational and more mature than a lot of people going away to college at the age of 18. I have a lot of friends that graduated from college and they have degrees in specific fields, and now they're not even going to work in those fields, and they're going to work these shitty fucking retail jobs and whatever other shitty jobs. And it's just like, there's no reason to do that. Like, you literally went to college to get a degree, you took on student loans, like you clearly expressed an interest in working in that particular field. So for you not to pursue that field or pursue any type of work within that field, even somewhat related, is like pretty disingenuous and pretty much self-defeating.